before giving the floor to the United States, I'd like to welcome the new permanent representative of the United States, Ambassador Michael Waltz, to the Security Council. We look forward to working closely with you in the coming days. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and it's very good to be with you and this esteemed body for the first time. Thank you, ASG Yensha, for your briefing. Of course, I too welcome the participation of Estonia's foreign minister in this briefing as well. Colleagues, just 9 days ago, this council met to discuss Russia's violation of Poland's airspace with a large number of military drones. In that meeting, the United States urged Russia to end the war in Ukraine and stop actions that could risk it escalating into a broader conflict. Instead, on September 19th, Russia again violated the airspace of a NATO member when 3 armed military aircraft flew 10 nautical miles into Estonian airspace, coming within 15 miles of the Estonian parliament. And as we said 9 days ago, the United States stands by our NATO allies in the face of these airspace violations, and I want to take this first opportunity to repeat and to emphasize the United States and our allies will defend every inch of NATO territory. Russia must urgently stop such dangerous behavior. At a time when President Trump in the United States has been focused and spent an enormous amount of time and effort to end this horrific war between Russia and Ukraine, we expect Russia to seek ways to de-escalate, not risk expansion. This event, following on the heels of the Russian drone incursion into Polish airspace, creates the impression that Russia either wants to escalate and pull more countries into this conflict with Ukraine, or doesn't have full control of those who operate its fighter planes and drones. So either scenario is very disconcerting, given that Russia is obviously a nuclear power with global reach. And so I once again urge Russia as a permanent member of this council to uphold international peace and security, to respect the sovereignty of its neighbors, to cease violating their airspace, and I call on Russia to negotiate directly with Ukraine to end that war. I thank you, and I very much am honored and look forward to working with each of you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Republic of Korea. To begin, my gratitude goes to ASG Yensha for the statement. Colleagues, the Republic of Korea is seriously concerned by the most recent in a series of deeply alarming incidents, this time impacting the territorial integrity of Estonia. On Friday, we were dismayed by reports of fighter jets from the Russian Federation violating Estonian airspace and remaining there over the Gulf of Finland for a total of 12 minutes. We note that this incident led to some countries responding by scrambling their jets in yet another troubling event over European territory. This once again appears to represent a significant breach of the sovereignty of United Nations member state, which could further threaten European and international security and simultaneously erode diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Friday's incidents in the Estonian skies represent just the latest occurrence in a series of concerning actions, following the recently reported Russian drone breaches of Poland and Romania. Colleagues, at this Council's 12th September meeting, in response to the violation of Poland's territorial integrity, my delegation warned that this incident was a resounding wake-up call and could mark a dangerous turning point, one where the war in Ukraine may no longer be able to be contained, instead spreading incrementally and insidiously further into Europe. Today, we reiterate our expanding concern over yet another seeming escalation. This incident suggests a troubling pattern that could proliferate and interconnect, raising the risk of grave miscalculation over even miscommunication. And it vividly illustrates the urgency of decisively ending this war. Colleagues, we remind once again the Security Council of Russia and the DPR case ongoing unlawful military cooperation, which violates multiple Security Council resolutions and directly threats peace and security in Europe and Asia. It must stop immediately. In conclusion, alongside the international community, the Republic of Korea continues to support diplomatic efforts to bring about lasting peace in this region. And I resume my functions as President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Margus Tsahkna, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Estonia.
Your Excellencies, thank you, President. Please allow me to thank the Presidency for convening the Security Council meeting at such a short notice. And I also would like to thank ASG Jensa for his valuable briefing. Ladies and gentlemen, what brings us here today is alarming. On 19 September 2025, 3 armed Russian MiG-31 fighter jets deliberately entered Estonian airspace in violation of our territorial integrity. They remained in our skies for 12 minutes, penetrating up to 10 kilometers deep and covering nearly 100 kilometers inside our sovereign territory. These are the hard facts based on solid evidence, whatever Russia is claiming. And let me show you the screenshot from our most modern radar screenshot. So you can see here as well, the red line is a violation of Estonian territory and sovereignty. You can see it very clearly. This is a fact. This is not something else. So here you can say, you can also see the radar screenshot where Russia fighter jets entered, where they were, and how they went out. They were warned already before. There was a very clear communication on all different channels as well, visibly. And there was no response, and just Russian fighter jets, they continued the violation of Estonian and also NATO airspace for 12 minutes, 100 kilometers. And this is a lot. And these are the hard evidences for that. Also, there are pictures of these fighter jets, and it is very clear that these fighter jets, they carried as well missiles. All of them, they carried missiles, and they were combat-ready planes. And you can see from here as well, Russian representatives, that these are the photos which really were taken during this heavy violation of NATO and Estonian airspace. So what I want to say, that violation is crystal clear, and Russia is lying again, as it has been lied before several times. We remember the occupation of Georgia, 2008, 2014, Crimea, 2022, aggression against Ukraine started. So please don't lie again. Hard evidence is here. So it is a dangerous escalation. It was a 4th violation of Estonia's airspace by Russia this year alone. but this one was deeper, longer, with 3 armed aircraft simultaneously and just minutes flight time away from Tallinn, our capital. I want to recall that member states' sovereignty and territorial integrity on land, at sea, and in the air must be respected at all times. So this was yet another reckless and flagrant violation of the United Nations Charter and of international law by our neighbor. We are here today because this violation of our sovereignty and threat of use of force concerns not only Estonia, but the entire international community. The 19 September incursion was not an isolated act, but part of a broader pattern of Russian provocations against its neighbors, while the permanent member of the Security Council continues its full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. On 9th of September, Russia presently violated Poland's borders by sending 19 drones into Poland's airspace. On 13th of September, a Russian attack drone flew for almost an hour over Romanian territory. Russian drones have been also found in Latvia and Lithuania, our neighboring countries. Russia's dangerous behavior cannot be tolerated. To do so would seriously undermine not only the United Nations Charter and international law, but would set very dangerous precedent, encouraging further aggression, fueling regional and global tensions, and ultimately endangering global peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in 34 years since Estonia joined the United Nations, we were obliged to ask the presidency to convene this meeting in the spirit of the preventive diplomacy and in order to stop immediately attempts at further escalation by Russia. We use this occasion to call again on the Russian Federation loud and clear to cease, without delay, its war of aggression against sovereign Ukraine and to abide by the obligations enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. We call on Russia to end all provocations and threats against its neighbors' sovereignty and territorial integrity. The international community must stand firm in demanding an end to these blatant breaches of the United Charter in order to prevent further escalation and to ensure international peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, Estonia is convinced that all responsible members of the international community should always call out such outrageous actions by any member of the United Nations, and even more so by a permanent member of the Security Council, entrusted with a special responsibility to safeguard international peace and security. And yet, words are not enough. As Russia itself has become a real threat to global peace and security, we need to exercise collectively maximum pressure on Russia, forcing it to just and lasting peace in Ukraine and forcing it to abandon its criminal, neo-colonial and imperial ambitions. Together we can hold Russia accountable for its crime of aggression against Ukraine, for the war crimes and crimes against humanity it has committed since 2014, and for its ongoing violations of international treaties and agreements it has pledged to uphold. Impunity, appeasement and further concessions would only embolden Putin and would lead to new crimes. We can succeed only if acting decisively together in defense of the United Nations Charter and the international law. Finally, let me assure that the members of the Security Council and wider audience that Russia's threats and provocations are not going to weaken our resolve to support Ukraine is its defense against the Russian aggression. Just and lasting peace in Ukraine will strengthen the multilateral system based on international law, with the United Nations and its charter at the core, as well as international peace and security across the globe. Thank you, President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Tsahkna for the statement. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Kaja Kallas, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies. The United Nations was founded on a set of shared values and principles, foremost the pursuit of peace and security. Although these values are being continuously tested and tried, the adherence to these values is still what brings us together in this room. There is one country present here in this room which is actively seeking to undermine the values and principles the nations of the United Nations have committed upholding. Last week, Russia once again violated international law and the sovereignty of an European country. For 12 minutes, 3 armed Russian fighter jets blatantly violated Estonian airspace. The same type of fighter jets that regularly bomb innocent civilians in Kiev. The recent violation of Estonian airspace is unprecedented in both scale and recklessness. It was a deliberate provocation which could have ended with devastating results. This comes after Russian violation of both Polish as well as Romanian airspace with drones a week earlier. It cannot be that Russia accidentally violates 3 times in 2 weeks European airspace. And if it was accidentally, it was a mistake, there has been plenty of time for Russian Federation to apologize and say, sorry, we made a mistake. Instead, we see a pattern. Russia is testing European borders, probing our resolve, undermining the security of the whole of Europe. Russia will continue to provoke as long as we allow it. Therefore, the United Nations and the international community must clearly condemn such actions. It is a breach of the UN Charter, which obliges all states to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of other countries. And it is particularly cynical that a permanent member of the UN Security Council, entrusted with safeguarding peace, actively seeks to undermine it. Russia's aggression against Ukraine continues, and now it is extending provocations against the European Union members. Russia hopes that it might force us to draw our focus away from supporting Ukraine and focus solely on our own security. Well, let me be very clear. European security starts with Ukraine. And any provocation against EU member states will only strengthen our resolve to support Ukraine. I say this openly to Russian representatives in this room. Your government's actions are reckless, dangerous, and go against the very principles of the United Nations. Our response is united and firm. First, we stand in full solidarity with Estonia, Poland, and Romania. Second, we collectively condemn Russian sovereignty violations. And third, the European Union will continue to help strengthen European defense and deterrence together with NATO. And fourth, for every test or every violation of our security, our resolve to support Ukraine grows. Russia cannot be allowed to normalize such behavior. International law is not optional. The sovereignty and security of one member state is sovereignty and security of all. I call on you to condemn Russia's violation of Estonia's airspace. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Kallas for the statement, and I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Radoslav Sikorski, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland.
Mr. President, Excellencies, this Emergency Security Council meeting has been called because a mere week after Russia sent drones into Poland, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets with their transponders off entered Estonian airspace without authorization and lingered for 12 minutes. On the same day, 2 Russian fighter jets violated the security zone over the Polish drilling platform in our economic zone in the Baltic Sea. If these were accidents, why not immediately acknowledge them and apologize. We have given Russia a pass in the past in such circumstances. But we have not heard any apologies, only lies. Together with the intensification of attacks on Ukraine, they seem to be an eloquent comment on, quote, moving from confrontation to dialogue, end quote, promised by Vladimir Putin in Alaska. These breaches of airspace are suspect because they are an escalation of hybrid war which Russia has waged against the West for years. Murders of politicians, journalists, human rights defenders and defectors, cyber attacks against hospitals and financial institutions, arsons, including in Poland, UK and Lithuania, postal packages containing incendiary devices all over Europe, including Germany, attacks on Ukrainian embassies, in addition to standard espionage and disinformation. Excellencies, this Council has a responsibility to send a clear message that such provocations will not be tolerated. It must stand in solidarity with Estonia, Romania, Poland, and all nations whose sovereignty is threatened by systemic Russian aggression. To the representatives of Russia, I have this to say. We know you don't care for international law and you are incapable of living in peace with your neighbors. Your insane nationalism contains a lust for domination that will not cease until you realize that the age of empires is over and that your empire will not be rebuilt. Every drone strike by the heroes of the armed forces of Ukraine, may God bless them, brings this day closer. Your 3-day special military operation can't even conquer Donbass for 10 years now. But the potential for criminal, catastrophic Russian mistakes is still there. By ordering mobilization in 1914, you precipitated the start of World War I, which bled Europe white and led to your Bolshevik revolution. By signing the Hitler-Stalin Pact, you helped launch World War II, the bloodiest in history. By Sovietizing Central Europe, you caused the Cold War. Don't start another one. We are peaceful democracies who have studiously avoided actively joining your attempt to reconquer Ukraine. But we will not be intimidated. I have only one request to the Russian government. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Sikorsky for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Johann Vadeful, Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs of Germany.
Mr. President, 12 minutes. 12 minutes in which 3 Russian fighter jets brazenly ventured into Estonian airspace. 12 minutes in which they made their way almost to the Estonian capital, to Tallinn. What happened early Friday morning marked a further dangerous escalation by Russia.